Okay, welcome to our first day of painting. I have my painting tools out ready to get started. This is called a palette. How many of you have used a palette before? Many of you have just used a paper plate instead. That's okay too. Turn it off. We actually happen to have fancy palettes, which means we also have lids. The lids come pre-decorated, as you can see. Any paint that dries on the lid, for the most part, unless it's already peeling, it's not coming off. You could spend an entire class period trying to get this stuff off, and it's just not going to come off. So just enjoy your pre-decorated palette, it'll be fine. The palette itself will come clean with the help of a tool called a palette knife. Can everyone say palette knife? Palette knife. Very good. Okay, this is our tool for cleaning. This is also our tool for mixing paint. You'll see there are 3 different shapes. The shape you use is going to end up being totally a personal preference. I prefer this one. That does not necessarily mean that you are going to prefer this one. Some people prefer this one. Some people prefer this one. You're going to have to try them all and decide which one you like the best. If you don't have enough of your preferred shape for your table, let me know and I'll switch them out for you. We're going to be using acrylic paint, and acrylic paint is basically a plastic. When plastic dries on plastic, it doesn't always bond. So on the palette, your dried paint will come out fairly easily. If that dries on your clothing, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to stay there for good. Now, I will say, in the past year or so, there have been these articles on Pinterest claiming you can get acrylic paint out of clothes. I've not tried it. If you want to try it, be my guest, let me know how it goes. Okay, you also will have different types of brushes. The 2 main types we have are a red bristle with the clear handle and a black bristle with a green handle. These are good for different things. If you need to put a ton of paint on your surface, you're probably going to want to reach for one of these, one of the green ones. If you are trying to do something smoother or more detailed, you are probably going to want one of these. Okay, this is a fine synthetic bristle. It's not going to put a ton of paint on your surface, but it is going to make it smooth. At your table, you will need 1 or 2 cans of water from the drawer. Some of them actually do have color coding on them, but don't feel obligated to use exactly the can that's the color of your table. You will also have, at this point, 5 different cups of paint. Each of these handy-dandy dollar store cups will have paint in it. Sometimes, if the paint's been sitting there for a while, it might have an unpleasant odor. I strongly recommend that you not put it up to your nose and decide to sniff it just to see if I'm right, okay? If it has a little bit of a stink, it'll probably be okay. If you see something that looks like mold, let me know. But probably it's just the paint. To get paint out of the cup is shared. So you need to use a clean palette knife. Sometimes you will need to stir up the paint a little bit before you can use it. And then you can put paint on your palette. If I want another color, what do I need to do? I need to clean the palette knife. They're right here. We have rags also available besides paper towels. You guys have actually done a decent job of bringing in paper towels, so we may not have to use these all the time. But there are plenty of rags available. You can see they have been well loved. They were well loved prior to their entrance into my art classroom. These were people's kitchen towels I didn't want anymore. But I can use them to clean it. A palette knife probably will not need any water. The paint will just wipe off. so it's nice and clean. Now I'm going to get my next color out. Okay, once the paint is on your palette, it's not going back into the communal cups. It is your problem. If you want to keep your paint nice and clean, you may want to go ahead and split it up into a couple sections depending on what you need. If you don't care, if the entire point of you getting blue and yellow is to make, what color does blue and yellow make? Green, very good. If the only reason you got it was to make green, you could go ahead and even put them in the same place and mix them up. Whenever you are mixing paint, you are only going to use the palette knife. You will not use a brush. And this is where you will want to experiment with the different kinds of palette knife shapes. You may find that you're better at using one than another. So notice I am just stirring up the paint with the palette knife in order to mix it. It's good practice to go ahead and clean off the palette knife as soon as I use it so that I don't accidentally pick it up in my excitement to get white and ruin the white for the whole table. Because who's going to be mad at you if you ruin the white for the whole table? The whole table and Miss Cone, because you're wasting my stuff and I don't like it. Now you actually can paint with the palette knife, and often and you think of like Vincent van Gogh, or you think of Monet, and you think of those really thick brush strokes. Sometimes that's what they've done, is they're not actually using a brush at all, they're using a palette knife. If you want to use your brush, most of the time you're going to go ahead and get it just a little bit wet. Dry off a little bit of the excess. I just want it damp. I don't want it soaking wet unless I'm trying to get a thin watery color. When I put paint on my brush, I need to never get paint above halfway up the bristles. So where I have paint on my brush right now is okay. You see how the yellow-green is only halfway up the bristles? Okay. If it gets higher up, it's going to start getting into the metal part of the brush that holds the bristles. Have you guys ever seen the paint brushes that are like that? Mm-hmm. They're all nasty and sticking out everywhere. The reason that happens is because paint gets up into the very ends of the bristles and dries there and forces them apart from each other. So if we always keep our paint halfway on the bristles or less, we're not going to have that problem ruining our brushes. When I'm painting, most of you have at least put paint on paper before, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. The shape of the brush is going to make a difference in what I want to do with that brush. This is a flat brush. It is going to be really good at lines. Now you may be thinking, oh, lines, I need a tiny little skinny brush to draw a line just like a pencil. That's not actually how it works. I can use the brush straight up and down if I really wanted to draw a line. But the best use of this is if I need a shape like a rectangle, is if I actually hold my brush at an angle, I can use that flat edge of the brush to draw a straight line, and then I can fill out from there. I can also use the edge of the brush, the corner, to create my straight line. And so with very little effort, I've created fairly straight lines for a rectangle. Does that make sense to everyone? If you sit there and try to take a really skinny brush, first, chances are my skinny brushes are the ones that have been destroyed already, so you're going to have a hard time finding a good one. But then you would be sitting there all day trying to get it perfect, and then you would go in with your big brush to try to fill it in, and you'd mess it up anyway. So just use the right tool for the job, use the right brush. If I am trying to create something rounder or more flowy, I might use a round brush. If I am actually drawing with my paintbrush, it's a little bit easier to do that with one of these than it is with one of the flat brushes. With acrylic paint, while it's wet, which is not very long, I can actually mix the paint on the paper. See how already it's kind of changing to a bluish green color? Because this is my palette, does it matter if I mess up the paint? As long as I do it on purpose, it's okay, right? If I mess up my paint on accident and have to get more paint, Miss Cohn's gonna be mad. But if I'm already mixing blue and yellow and I need to put some more on my brush, it's fine. See how you can even start to blend the colors together? By using wet paint together, I can do that. Our first activity, though, is going to rely on mixing colors, and so you're going to want to do your mixing in the palette. Did you guys notice where my flat brush was while I was using the round one? It was in the water. I want to keep it in the water. Because I'm going to be keeping it in the water, you actually don't want to fill up your water can the whole way. I know this is hard to see, but you see how it's only about halfway up in the can? Can everyone see that? Your goal really is for the water to be just below the level where the metal part touches the handle. If water gets up in here, that's when the brushes fall apart at that point. A lot of them have duct tape color coating, which is going to reinforce that. We still want to avoid getting water up in here. Especially the green-handled brushes. The green handle is wood, and water soaks into wood and makes a mess, and we don't want that. Okay, I'm done painting for today. What do I need to do?
Clean up.
Before I clean up, what should I probably do? Put the lid on the palette so I don't lose my paint. Okay, so now I need to clean my brushes.